to see some serious shit.
Ike, I think you've seen more new writers happen, new science fiction writers, than most have. How about a quick course for would-be science fiction writers? What are the most common mistakes you think are made in the field?
Well, from my standpoint, the most common mistake a science fiction writer makes is to downgrade science. Now, these days particularly, many science fiction writers have very little to do with science, and many science fiction stories have very little to do with science. But whether a science fiction story has science or not, it is impossible to write a good one if you are completely ignorant of science. You will make mistakes even when you think science isn't involved. I think that it is important to at least know something about science, whether you're going to put science in or not. It shows.
So, I think the best place to start, which will springboard us into the nitty-gritty details, is where does Prometheus stand in terms of quality in the series? Personally, I hate Alien Resurrection. Can't stand it. I've never seen the Alien vs. Predator films, AVP. But I do find it hard to believe, lame as I thought it was, that Prometheus is worse than they are. And I have heard that from a few people. I do think Alien 3 is a better film than Prometheus. I'll talk about that later. But where do we stand? I'll start, of course, ladies first. Kristina, I think you've seen the AVP films, haven't you? Correct me if I'm wrong. So where does Prometheus stand for you?
I saw Alien vs. Predator. I never saw Requiem, or whatever the heck it's called.
Yeah, AVP Requiem.
Yeah, I never saw that one. So Prometheus was not as bad, I think, as Alien vs. Predator. It wasn't as utterly forgettable as that one, but not by much. I mean, I think the only reason I'm giving the nod to Prometheus over Alien vs. Predator is just because Michael Fassbender's in it, and I love him. If Fassbender wasn't in it, I probably would say, you know what, I'd rather watch Alien vs. Predator again. I really did not like Prometheus at all. At all. I thought it just sucked. I was bored out of my mind. Like you said, Phil, like in your review, you said you couldn't really say that Fassbender stole the show because there isn't a show to steal, and I'm really on board with you there. He's the most interesting thing happening in this film to me, but I really did not enjoy the film.
Shawn?
Yeah, I pretty much, it's been about 8 days since I saw it. It's just not really a memorable movie to me, so it's kind of hard to really even care about it. I just don't really, and my biggest complaint were the characters, because when I go to a movie, that's pretty much the first thing. If I don't care about the characters, I can't care about the movie at all. And I had no attachment to any of them. But in the movie's defense, for pretty much the first half hour to 45 minutes, I really felt like it was going somewhere. It felt like it was kind of going in a different direction than I expected, but I was like, okay, I can go with this. And then it just completely lost me.
I do have a finger I can place on this, Shawn, but we'll go into that in a bit. Jamie, where do you stand?
Into the franchise? I think I have it third because it's the most, it's actually, it's interesting. Like, unlike Shawn, and I'm not saying this not to be like a smartass, but like, Shawn is, and actually Chris also, but you guys saw it a week ago, you kind of forgotten about it. I'm still thinking about it. And I actually rewatched it last night just to sort of say, like, all right, does it still hold up on second viewing? And I thought both the strengths and weaknesses both were solidified, actually. It's interesting. It has ideas I mean, we'll get to in a few minutes, but it has ideas that I don't, not that Alien 3 and Alien Resurrection didn't have ideas, they did. It's about the execution, and it's a much more interesting, thought-provoking movie than those two films. I think Alien 3 gets a free pass because in the years since, David Fincher became David Fincher, so it almost becomes a thing about, like he can do what he wanted. It's like, he was, the studio wouldn't let him do what he wanted. It's like, well, that's any movie, ladies and gentlemen. That's most movies. Like, Fincher became, not a brand name, but he became a director. Alien 3 is still a bad movie. In any version you watch, it's still a mess. And no, I don't blame Fincher for it, but then again, I don't give it a free pass either. And Alien Resurrection, I actually like it more than Alien 3, to be honest. Because at least it kind of goes back to a weird melding of the first two films.
Okay, well, let's pursue this line then, Jamie, because I think the reason why I'm sticking up for Alien 3, and you're right, I shouldn't cop out and say, well, of course, I'm only talking about the extended version. No, I'm talking about either version. But in that movie, there are characters. There are characters that actually have...
but the thing is, they're just as archetype and as not as finely developed as Prometheus, I find.
Wrong!
That's your opinion.
No, that's my ruling, pal.
Well, you've got two guys. You've got, the doctor, Charlie Dance, who we love, and then you've got, what's his name? God, I need the names.
Charles S. Dutton's the actor who plays.
You see, you read my mind. You know exactly what I was going to say. Like, those are the two great, those two guys. I mean, the difference I feel with Prometheus is that you've got Fassbender. I think Naomi Rapace was interesting. Not necessarily. I mean, I'm rambling. I'm sorry, Phil. Go ahead.
No. Here's how we'll play it, Jamie. Okay, I'll talk about those characters in Alien 3 and why I think it's they have more depth than in Prometheus, and then I'll cut back to you and you tell me about these characters that you saw in this extended version of the movie that I didn't see, where they have personality and they have depth. Okay, that's slightly bitchy of me, but that's how I feel.
No, I love it. That's awesome. Let's do it.
Okay, so obviously you're right. Yeah, we have Charles Dance in Alien 3,
Dylan,
the Doctor, who is the only vaguely decent person, and because of that becomes the only person we can in any way empathize with or sort of form any bond with in Alien 3. Even Ripley herself, for obvious reasons, is very, very cold and detached, and she has that bloody...
But I like that. But everything she's gone through, she is going to be cold and detached. I do like that about Alien 3. I mean, Alien 3 is a bleak movie. It is not, I mean, you think about the first movie, which is a pure horror film, as you call it, Phil, a haunted house movie, which it is. Even Ridley Scott says this. The second movie is a war movie. I mean, as Cameron said, it's basically about Vietnam and in space. That's awesome. But I didn't necessarily feel that anybody was really trying to bring anything to it this time out for Alien 3. Everyone was sort of in the same monotone. We found religion. We've been left by ourselves on this planet. No one's going to bother us. We're going to pay for our sins in the afterlife. I did, except for Charles Dutton and Charles Dance. I felt like everyone else is interesting. Here, a great example. Does anybody, what characteristic does the one guy who survived at the end have, Morse? What characteristic does he have? Well, bald. Well, they're all bald. He's an asshole. Well, they're all assholes. You know what I'm getting at?
I'll tell you. No, I'll tell you exactly what it is. He is the one guy who's the most overly aggressive of the bunch. Like when Ripley's in front of the guys and she's talking about the creature and stuff, he's the one who's aggressively yelling at it like a fraidy cat, blah, blah, blah. So you think, okay, you'll be the first to go. And he's actually the only one who lives. That's what that one is. That's broad, absolutely, but there is something there. With Charles Dance, as I'm saying, he's
great in the movie.
We like this character, and it's probably because Charles Dance is so damn charming. As Kristina and I will tell you right now, he's playing someone we should hate on Game of Thrones, but we don't because he's Charles Dance. And in this movie, we find out that the guy is a drunkard, a druggie, a doctor who has killed people. He's done the most horrible, horrible things, and yet we're stuck now in that conflict because of what we know about the character.
You know what's interesting about that, Phil? That's a similar problem that Prometheus does have, I'll give you that, is that there's an interesting dynamic with the character, with the female and this potentially male lead, and the movie makes the decision to go ahead and get rid of him. How many minutes in till Clemens is killed? Ooh, 40 minutes in? It's not even an hour. It's like 35, 40-ish minutes and he's out. He's like the first major kill.
Depends which version you're watching, but it's still too early.
It's still too early. You've destroyed a dynamic between the characters, and to go back to Prometheus real quick. And again, I want to go ahead and say real quick here is that I like the movie. I will defend it in certain areas. I cannot defend everything about this movie. In fact, I'm going to be the guy that tell you right now is that the criticisms against this movie that Phil are presenting against Prometheus, they're legit. That Shawn and Chris are saying, they're legit. It's just I saw it differently. Yeah, I can't argue with them. There's some bad writing in here, and there's some lazy execution.
Okay, well tell me though, Jamie. Tell me about the characters that you like in Prometheus, why you like them, what their characters are, because I honestly, I've heard people talk, for example, about Naomi Rapace.
I liked her foreignness, actually. I actually liked the fact that they were just the thing about her is I like the fact that her character is trying to search for truth. I mean, you look at the Wikipedia profile and they say her character believes in God. I didn't see that in the movie, did you? She believes in aliens. She was basically alien contact, trying to find her mother. And That's what she was. Let's be honest. And in fact, did you bring that up when you reviewed it?
No, but it was extraordinary actually, reminding myself how similar in some ways Contact and Prometheus are. They are linked in quite a few ways. It's just the fact that Contact actually does present. It presents the argument from both sides for science versus faith. Prometheus doesn't do that. It lays it out on the table at the start and does nothing with it.
It's a weird thing because and this kind of comes back. I think this kind of has something to do with it. You guys can disagree on this because you are on everything else in this movie. Kidding aside, one's religious views could potentially reflect how one thinks of the movie. Some people are arguing. I think in a snide way. I'm Baptist. I believe in God. To me, there's no doubt that there is a God. It's breathtaking, that opening, and I respect the fact the movie had it presented its own ideology and said there is no God in the first 3 minutes of the movie. I don't agree with that, but this is the filmmakers telling their own story, making their own statement. They're entitled to do that, and I respected that actually. But what's weird is that by the end of the movie, then her character kind of goes around and says, "Well, if they were to, where did they come from?" And I agree that was kind of half-assed. Like, well, I don't know. The movie very clearly states that this is where you came from. So why are we suddenly saying where did they come from? Like, I didn't think that was a really interesting. That was really lazy. What wasn't lazy was I thought her question is something that we all want to know, is that if you can meet your creator, God, if you will, or in this case the engineers, you want to know, why did you create us? And furthermore, when we see the movie that the engineers were going to destroy the Earth, they created the Earth. We don't know why they did. We never get that answer. And at the end of the movie, we find out they were going to kill the Earth, and she wants to know, not even why did you create us by the end of the film, it's like, why did you want to kill us? What did we do to you? And I love that question. I love the fact there is no answer. Because how does one answer that question?
Right there, you've hit upon the heart of why Prometheus is working for people like you and not working for other people. And I'll explain this in detail. As far as the world and the mythology it creates and the questions that it doesn't answer, it's definitely intentional. And I don't mean that from a crass commercial perspective of just setting things up for a sequel that may never come, because it's arrogance to think that way. I honestly do think that Ridley Scott and the writers came into Prometheus thinking, well, remember what was done in Alien? We set up this spaceship and this alien world and this species and this amazing life cycle that the creature has and the space jockey, and we didn't explain any of it. We left the audience to figure it out. Some of the answers to those questions have been debated for decades, and the audience loved not knowing the answer. They loved debating the answer for themselves. We can do it again here. We can set up this stuff. Let's just create a mystique about it. Let's just create beautiful imagery and let the audience debate it in the lobby afterwards with awed curiosity. For some reason, what works for one film just will not wash for the audience of another film. And as I think you'll agree, the audiences coming out of Prometheus, they're not saying, what was that? Wow. They're saying, what the fuck was that? And there is a double standard. I think it's fair to say. What works for some films doesn't work for others. It is hard to put your finger onto why. Just to give you another example of this, actually, a film I was watching this week, Clive Barker's Hellraiser. I'm watching Clive Barker's Hellraiser. It's one of my favourite horror films. And as I was watching it again, I realised, wait a second. This film's not really explaining anything. It creates this fascinating concept of hell and a doorway to hell and how someone could potentially escape from it and return to the land of flesh and bone. It explains the rules, but it doesn't explain why they work. How does blood on the floor bring back this guy from hell? How's more blood going to help regenerate him further? Where does the puzzle box come from? How exactly do you open it? For some reason, though, it doesn't matter. It's cool, it's original, it's bizarre, and you're in awe of it. And there is a double standard here. The question I have to ask to everybody is, can you put your finger on why people just aren't accepting that for Prometheus?
I think it's because the people expected. I think it's because it was a case where we talk about marketing a lot on the show, but I mean, let's be honest here. This was marketed like a horror movie. This is not a horror movie. I don't think people were really mentally getting ready for a movie about the beginning and the existence of where do we come from and all those kind of questions. I don't think they were. I think they wanted a simple horror movie like Alien is, because Alien is just a horror movie, really.
They were looking for what they saw in the trailer, and the trailer presented one movie, and then they got something else entirely. I mean, if you look at all the trailers and all of the TV spots, it barely touches upon all of the philosophical questions that this film raises, and I think that it was actually, while it's smart to sort of hide that stuff away, because if you present this movie as being just a big old philosophy class, no one's going to want to go see it. So yeah, it was smart to sort of hide that stuff away, but at the same time, if you're presenting your movie as one thing and then you're basically baiting and switching on your audience, yeah, they're going to be pissed off, and the word of mouth has reflected that.
I don't know. You guys kind of bring up some fair points on the philosophical questions it does raise. But I think you really hit the nail on the head when you talk about the marketing. And it just sells a completely different movie, and I bought into it. It was not anything like what I expected. That doesn't necessarily speak to the quality of it, of course, but it ruined my ability to enjoy it the first time. Maybe that'll change when I see it again. I don't know. Sometimes that happens, sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah, I'm just really befuddled throughout this film at the choices that characters make and the characterization of these characters, to the point where we have a character get lit on fire and burned to death by Charlize Theron, and then no one ever mentions it again. We have a character who gets her abdomen ripped open and basically has an abortion, and then 10 seconds later she's running around the ship showing no ill effects. We have a character who's supposed to be a robot and is supposed to be, not human and have no soul. This is mentioned several times during the film, but yet for some reason he's poisoning this guy who's acting like a dick towards him, and there's no real payoff for that.
There's no explanation either. I mean, again, I can't defend the movie there. Where is this animosity between David and Charlie coming from? Because, I mean, by the movie we saw, Charlie starts the fight, and by movie logic, and by the way we view logic in general in real life, it's like, well, whatever asshole starts it out of nowhere, you're the dickhead. And so David is perfectly nice. He's a robot. He's not supposed to have emotions, but you've got this guy kind of taunting, like, how are your lessons going, David? It's like, well, why are you chastising the guy? Like, what the hell's the deal with that? He didn't do anything to you. But then it turns around and you go, well, but why did David fuck with his DNA? The problem is it presents an idea, like, it's similar to Alien 3, that the similarity is that you've got an interesting dynamic between two characters. It's like they're both two believers, and we're seeing something interesting because Charlie is starting to be mutated into the first of a new species by David, but we don't know why he did it, and you expect the scene where Wayland shows up, spoiler alert, okay, well maybe Wayland told David to do it. No, he just did it to be an asshole. There's no explanation as to why he did that. He just kind of did it. Okay, well, what's Charlie turning into? Like, we don't know. Well, why can't we see that further develop? Like, maybe he would have turned into Senator Kelly in X-Men, a big puddle of water. Like, we don't know. That's interesting. It's gone. And you understand Vickers' character saying, that's the most Ripley character in the movie is her, because she's very understandably saying, you can't get on the ship, we don't know what's been done to you, for all they know. And that's the thing, we never find out, none of the characters ever find out that David fucked with his DNA. She never, Shawn never finds out. It's implied she did, but it's like, nah, but she really didn't find out. That's bizarre. Like, I like that the explanation that these were basically weapons of mass destruction, and they were different strands of all these different kind of DNAs that the engineers had come with in those containers. All of them contain all these strands of different kind of life forms that could be created. We happen to be one of them. I love that idea. But that's just me, though.
Here's the thing, and here's what kept reverberating
Yes.
in my mind as I was watching the movie. I remember I have this old Star Trek record about the making of the show. It was an old record done back in the 70s, actually. But there was a great conversation on it between Gene Roddenberry, creator of Star Trek, and Isaac Asimov, the great science fiction writer. And there was something that Isaac Asimov said in that interview that's always stuck with me, and always reverberates in my head whenever I watch a science fiction movie now, because Gene Roddenberry asked him, what's the key to writing a good science fiction story? And Isaac Asimov said, all I know is that it is impossible to write a good one if you are completely ignorant of science, because you will make mistakes all the time, even when you think science isn't involved. Prometheus is the proof of that. That's what really shocked me about the movie. And don't get me wrong, I didn't hate the movie. I just found it very, very mediocre. But the movie is stupid. It is very, very ignorant of its own internal logic. In fact, I'm not the best one for spotting plot holes as I'm watching a movie, but the amount of conversations I've had with people at work over the last week or so, pointing out more and more holes in this thing, has just confounded me. It's confounded me because how can so many normal people find this many errors after one viewing of a film, and yet the people who spent a year or more making it were so clearly oblivious to them? I cannot imagine that. So while
I think it's arrogance, to be honest. I'm gonna be honest with you. I think people are just like, look, it's Ridley Scott. He's going back to Alien. That's awesome. Yay, yay, yay. It's like, well, that's not good enough. That's the impression I get, because there are some things that there's bad writing. I'll give another example, is the development about the pregnancy. That comes out of nowhere. There is absolutely, at least with the search for truth, the search for where we came from, that's Shaw's whole arc. It's the beginning of the movie. I dug that. But the whole, in the pregnancy, I can't bear life, Charlie, and then like 20 minutes later after that scene, that revelation, which comes out of nowhere, she's having the C-section. 20 minutes later, it's just random setup. It's just as to have payoff to that scene from 20 minutes prior. And the scene's gut-wrenching to watch, and I've seen it both times. The audience just wince during the sequence, but it is. It's supposed to be ironic, like, oh my god, she can't have a baby, and now she's giving birth to an alien baby inside her.
As a woman, as a person who's had minor surgery before, there is no way in hell that she is going to be up and at 'em, running around that ship after she just had her stomach ripped open. I don't care if this is the future. I don't know. No. Because even if it's the future, it's still a human body. She still knew she was going to be in enough pain that she needed to shoot herself up with that anesthesia or whatever the hell that was she kept sticking herself with. And she's running around the ship all sweaty and bloody, and no one even says, what the hell happened to you? She's just, oh my god, I could not believe that.
At first, the big part for me was why there was the medical table that was supposedly only designed to work on men, if I understood correctly.
I can actually answer that question.
Well, I think I eventually did, and I might be wrong, so I'm interested to hear what you're going to say. I initially was thinking, okay, this seems like a pretty obvious plot hole here. If it's not designed to work on men, how can she just go in there and tell it what to do and pretty much perform a C-section on just like that? Then, of course, we come to find out that Wayland's on board and all that, and that's why it was designed, yeah. So when I'm watching the movie, that was kind of the biggest thing for me, and then as it's revealed, it kind of starts to make sense. I feel like they wasted David's character. I feel like they wasted Fassbender. Just the ambiguity around, like you said, they never really, Shawn never really discovers what was going on, what David did. And it's kind of ambiguous as to, is he really, someone we can kind of side with, or has he been under the employ of Wayland the entire time? Like, it was just kind of this general sense of not being able to identify with this character. Obviously, he's an android, so you can only identify so much, but yeah, I don't know.
I liked it, like, they didn't try to do the cliche of, I want to be human. Like, I don't understand emotions. Like, they actually didn't play that up. He's just, the other thing I liked is that, the explanation as to why Wayland's on board, or Pruneface as Phil called him, he doesn't, like, it's not for, we want to weaponize it, we want to make even more billions of dollars. It's a very simple, I don't want to die. And if these dudes created us, maybe they're immortal. Like, that's a simple, fair assessment. I'm like, all right, that's simple good, I thought. And David's thing, I think we can all agree he's not evil, because at the end of the movie, I mean, Shaw trusts him at the end of the movie to go off to Engineer World for the sequel, you know.
Can I just pick you up on that, actually, just before Chris jumps in here?
Yes.
I was noticing that, you know, during David's decapitation, it just had me, of course, naturally thinking back to the death of Cain in the first movie, but Ian Holmes' character, and the the destruction of Bishop is a good way to put it, Lance Henriksen's character. And it just made me realise, again, how tame Prometheus is by comparison. You watch those first two movies, those characters, they're vomiting up, Ash. Sorry. Ash is the robot played by Ian Holm. I shall keep that in, because that's embarrassing. But anyway, you see those two movies, and they're vomiting up milk, they're vomiting up their innards, they're covered in gunk, and, you know, what happens to David in this movie?
Nothing. There's no, like, he's just kind of twitzing. But his body, you see his body's still functioning. It's just kind of like, where's my head?
And it's perfectly coiffed.
And if you notice, he drinks milk. If you notice at the beginning of the movie, during that wonderful opening montage of him across the inside the Prometheus for 2 years, waiting for everyone to wake up. I actually love that bit, actually. That was probably my favorite bit in the movie.
Well, I think that's probably the biggest problem, isn't it? Is that however you want to slice it and wherever it fits into the series, fact remains, this is the 7th Alien film, if you count the AVP films. So
yeah, you might as well.
So the amount of room you have to maneuver to show things that, you know, haven't been done before is very, very limited. But of course, the whole gimmick of this series has always been that they call back to the original movies. And I don't even think people would have minded that, because it's Ridley Scott doing it, returning to his own creation, and in a lot of ways it was his creation, even though he didn't write the script, even though Giger designed the creature and the sets and stuff. It's Ridley who put together the vision and the package, so he deserves a lot of credit. But no, it just like, and of course the biggest one for me, and this was the moment where I could pinpoint where I knew we were in trouble. I talked about this during my review, and I just wanted to see whether you agree with me, because I've had people on YouTube debating me about this and saying I'm wrong, so let's find out if I am wrong. Okay. Logan Marshall Green's character, the one that looks like Tom Hardy, the archaeologist who, unlike Noomi, he's like a rock and roll archaeologist, which I'm fine with. You know, he's really excited, he doesn't have glasses, which is refreshing.
He's a real guy.
He's a real guy, that's so right. And for the first 20 minutes, I'm like, I like this character, you know, it's different, he's got a personality. Great. Of course, they arrive on the planet, they find the corpse of an engineer. Oh, why did we even bother showing up? I wanted to talk to one, and we've only been on the planet half a day, and Charlize Theron's a jerk, and I wanted to talk to an engineer. And then, you know, he starts picking on David, and he's drunk and throwing pool balls across the table, and I'm just like, okay, we're in trouble here. This is clearly a movie that's going to change the personalities of the characters at a moment's notice because it feels it's convenient, and doesn't realise that the audience is smarter than that and actually remembers, no, sorry, we actually remember the person you were 5 minutes ago, and you've only been on the planet for half a day, and you're giving up. Ugh!
Yeah, that whole thing about him getting so depressed after just seeing a couple of bodies, it made no sense to me. And you were talking about characters just being characters just for the sake of driving the plot along and not really... I just don't understand why Charlize Theron is such a cunt in this film. She's just so unnecessarily cunty, and then out of nowhere she's just like, oh, I'll just bang Idris Elba. And I swear when she was like, oh, come up to my room or whatever, I thought that she was going to lure him up there and she was going to kill him and all hell was going to break loose or something. But no, I guess they went up there and banged or something. I don't know, because we never see what happens and it's never mentioned again. Okay.
What did you guys think of Guy Pearce as Pruneface? Because when I first saw him, we knew Guy Pearce was in the movie. And we had seen that fake video, viral marketing video, like he's giving a TED Talk conference, a fake one, introducing David, the new androids, and then it's like years later. It took me a second because I realized that that's Guy Pearce in old age makeup, but it actually went away quickly. In fact, during the same scene when we first meet his character with a little dog, and he's, telling people like, "This is my son David, and he has no soul," and all that shit. I was like, all right, I buy into this. Like, I'm able to look past it quickly, but it does take you back a second, specifically if you know the actor.
It makes no sense. Like, how does he know he's dead? Like, and why would he? There was too many questions, and I started writing it all down in my little notes in my head. I was like, okay, I'm coming back to this. And then, of course, it turns out that it wasn't just thrown away; that he actually does show up. But the point is, from that point on, that was the point where I gave up on the film, because the movie then goes down a totally just plain that silly route. First of all, I couldn't get over the fact that, and I know we can't prove exactly what kind of stasis Mr. Whalen was in compared to the other people, but we do know that stasis affects these perfectly normally healthy people, and they start shaking and sweating and throwing up. I can't believe that Mr. Whalen managed to survive the trip if he is, as he appears in the movie, a bag of bones that a sharp breeze would kill. And that's just the way that it's presented, so I couldn't get over that. But also, the movie becomes about this old prune going to meet the engineer. For whatever reason, it's what he wants to do before he dies. It essentially becomes, granting an old dying man his last wish. I want to meet my creator before I die, which is not the movie we wanted to see. It's not the movie we thought they were making, and it's certainly not a road that we're prepared to go down. Certainly not me. So at that point, I honestly checked out of the movie. Not to mention the fact that the makeup is fucking atrocious. Chris?
Yeah, the makeup is kind of bad, but it's nowhere near as bad as that old people makeup from Watchmen. I mean, that just set a new low in terms of old people makeup. It was just, wow. But I do agree with you about pretty much everything you just said about the stasis. How could he survive that if he's supposed to be so frail? And you have these healthy people who are messed up. He should have been dead the moment they took him out of that tube.
I actually hated the last shot in the movie, because whether or not you guys liked the movie or didn't, or the ideas and the act and the performances, et cetera, at least I thought it worked great without having to get the alien, the shoehorn in the alien element of this movie, and it sort of made a little bit of sense when they kept saying, well, it has the alien DNA, i.e. it's set in the same universe, but we're not really following those movies. I mean, we are, but it's not like, we don't cut to a scene where little Ripley wakes up and has a nightmare. But seeing the xenomorph in the last shot, I hated that. Absolutely hated that. And it's funny because this actually does something that I think we all had the same criticism a year ago with X-Men First Class, is that they tried to tie the knot too much just in case there wasn't another one with X-Men First Class, where we all agreed that the movie would have been better if it ended with Charles and Eric still friends and opening the school together and leaving the door open just in case there's more to have more friction between their friendship. You could still have X-Men First Class end with Charles being quadriplegic, but have him and Eric still on the same side. Here they left a lot of shit open that clearly, I mean, how many years is Prometheus set before Alien? Like 100 years or so, or 200? It's a couple of decades. And that's all fine and good, but I just hated the fact they actually had to include the goddamn thing. It's like, it didn't need it. It was asking questions all by itself without you thinking, oh wait, it's an Alien movie. I forgot. We gotta put the alien in it.
It's just the classic symptom of any prequel. I mean, think about Rise of the Apes. Rise of the Apes has this perfectly logical ending where we leave Caesar and the apes in the forest, in the trees, and the camera pans up. And then, if you remember, we get that extra scene of that one guy coughing his guts up, full of virus, about to head on a flight. And then the wonderful end credits which tell us the entire human race is about to be wiped out because it's throwing a bone to a sequel or setting up the original movies. And it's just a symptom of this. Personally, I didn't mind it at all because I thought that was the only moment where the film was being honest about what it was. Sweep away all that pretentious bullshit that people have been saying in the press about what it is and what it isn't. It is a prequel, so you need to set things up. I would have been angry if the movie had just ended with that shit flying in the clouds, because that's a see you in 2 years ending. And I hate those. With the ending that we got in the final shot, it does at least feel in some way like a definitive ending. Like, I honestly did feel, okay, I could pop in Alien 1 right after this movie and it would work. I actually thought the last 5 minutes, it's weird because I don't particularly like this movie, but I did like the setup. I'm absolutely fine with the explanation of the alien life cycle and how it works and how that creature will eventually turn into the traditional alien. I was fine with that. I even didn't mind the look of the engineers, to be honest with you, but that's mainly because I never felt that the space jockey was an actual, elephant head man thing. I always thought it was a suit.
I thought that was really cool, actually, that it's basically a suit, and like they look like, actually, if you've seen drawings of Prometheus, the god, or the Titan, he kind of looks like that. I think that was a stylistic decision, depending on which drawing you've seen. I liked that simple, good design of the engineers. I don't know. What else? Where else would there be to go with this? Honestly, if there was a Prometheus sequel, which I know a year ago I said there wouldn't be an X-Men First Class sequel, and there is one getting made. But there's not going to be another Prometheus movie. I think we can all agree to that.
That they had a chance here to actually breathe life into this thing again, and instead they've created the final tombstone, the final epitaph on it. I'm sorry to say that, but I cannot imagine there's any enthusiasm left in this thing. If people are going to think about Alien, certainly me, all I'm going to do is I'm just going to watch the wonderful first two and the third one, which I enjoy, on my Blu-ray player, and I'll just consider it a trilogy, and that's the end of it. Honestly, I don't even know. No, I'll see Prometheus again. I'll see this extended cut bullshit just to give it a shot.